Farmer Boy. Christmas Part 2. Almanzo ran out, whooping, and Father and Mother came behind him, as calm as if they had never hurried in their lives. Frank and Fred and Abner and Mary tumbled out of the sleigh, all bundled up, and before Aunt Lindy had handed Mother the baby, Uncle Andrew's sleigh was coming. The yard was full of boys and the house filled with hoop skirts. The uncles stamped snow off their boots and unwound their mufflers. Royal and Cousin James drove the sleighs into the buggy house. They unhitched the horses and put them in stalls and rubbed down their snowy legs. Almanzo was wearing his button cap, and he showed the cousins his jackknife. Frank's cap was old now. He had a jackknife, but it only had 3 blades. Then Almanzo showed his cousins Star and Bright, and the little bobsled, and he let them scratch Lucy's fat white back with corn cobs. He said they could look at Starlight if they'd be quiet and not scare him. The beautiful colt twitched his tail and came daintily stepping toward them. Then he tossed his head and shied away from Frank's hand thrust through the bars. "You leave him be," Almanzo said. "I bet you don't dast go in there and get on his back," said Frank. "I dast, but I got better sense," Almanzo told him. "I know better than to spoil that fine colt." "How did it spoil him?" Frank said. "Yeah, you're scared he'd hurt you. You're scared of that little bitty colt." "I am not scared," said Almanzo. "But Father won't let me." "I guess I'd do it if I wanted to, if I was you. I guess your father wouldn't know," Frank said. Almanzo didn't answer, and Frank got up on the bars of the stall. "You get down off there," Almanzo said, and he took hold of Frank's leg. "Don't you scare that colt." "I'll scare him if I want to," Frank said, kicking. Almanzo hung on. Starlight was running around and around the stall, and Almanzo wanted to yell for Royal, but he knew that would frighten Starlight even more. He set his teeth and gave a mighty tug, and Frank came tumbling down. All the horses jumped, and Starlight reared and smashed against the manger. "I'll lick you for that," Frank said, scrambling up. "You just try and lick me," said Almanzo. Royal came hurrying from the south barn. He took Almanzo and Frank by the shoulders and marched them outwards. Fred and Abner and John came silently after them, and Almanzo's knees wobbled. He was afraid Royal would tell Father. "Let me catch you boys fooling around those colts again," Royal said, "and I'll tell Father and Uncle Wesley. You'll get the hides thrashed off you." Royal shook Almanzo so hard that he couldn't tell how hard Royal was shaking Frank. Then he knocked their heads together. Almanzo saw stars. "Let that teach you to fight on Christmas Day, for shame," Royal said. "I only didn't want him to scare Starlight," Almanzo said. "Shut up," said Royal. "Don't be a tattletale. Now you behave yourselves or you'll wish you had. Go wash your hands, it's dinner time." They all went into the kitchen and washed their hands. Mother and the aunts and the girl cousins were taking up the dining table. Dinner had been turned around and pulled out till it was almost as long as the dining room, and every inch of it was loaded with good things to eat. Almanzo bowed his head and shut his eyes tight while Father said the blessing. It was a long blessing because this was Christmas Day. But at last Almanzo could open his eyes. He sat and silently looked at the table. He looked at the fat roast goose, the drumsticks sticking up, and the edges of dressing curling out. The sound of Father's knife sharpening on the whetstone made him even hungrier. He looked at the big bowl of cranberry jelly and at the fluffy mountain of mashed potatoes with melting butter trickling down. He looked at the heap of mashed turnips and the golden baked squash and the pale fried parsnips. He swallowed hard and tried not to look anymore. He couldn't help seeing the fried apples and onions and the candied carrots. He couldn't help gazing at the triangles of pie waiting by his plate, the spicy pumpkin pie, the melting cream pie, the rich dark mince oozing from between the mince pie's flaky crusts. He squeezed his hands together between his knees. He had to sit silent and wait, but he felt achy and hollow inside. All grown-ups at the head of the table must be served first. They were passing their plates and talking and heartlessly laughing. The tender pork fell away in slices under Father's carving knife. The white breast of the goose went piece by piece from the bare breastbone. Spoons ate up the clear cranberry jelly and gouged deep into the mashed potatoes and ladled away the brown gravies. Almanzo had to wait to the very last. He was youngest of all, except Abner and the babies, and Abner was company. At last, Almanzo's plate was filled. The first taste made a pleasant feeling inside him, and it grew and grew, while he ate and ate and ate. He ate till he could eat no more, and he felt very good inside. For a while he slowly nibbled bits from his second piece of fruitcake. Then he put the fruity slice in his pocket and went out to play. Royal and James were choosing sides to play Snow Fort. Royal chose Frank, and James chose Almanzo. When everyone was chosen, they all went to work, rolling snowballs through the deep drifts of the barn. They rolled till the balls were almost as tall as Almanzo. Then they rolled them into a wall. They packed snow between them and made a good fort. Then each side made its own little snowballs. They breathed on the snow and squeezed it solid. They made dozens of hard snowballs. When they were ready for the fight, Royal threw a stick into the air and caught it when it came down. James took hold of the stick above Royal's hand. Then Royal took hold of it above James's hand, and so on to the end of the stick. James's hand was last, so James's side had the fort. How the snowballs flew! Almanzo ducked and dodged and yelled and threw snowballs as fast as he could till they were all gone. Royal came charging over the wall with all the enemy after him, and Almanzo rose up and grabbed Frank. Headlong they went into the deep snow outside the wall, and they rolled over and over, hitting each other as hard as they could. Almanzo's face was covered with snow, and his mouth was full of it, but he hung on to Frank and kept hitting him. Frank got him down, but Almanzo squirmed out from under. Frank's head hit his nose, and it began to bleed. Almanzo didn't care. He was on top of Frank, hitting him as hard as he could in the deep snow. He kept saying, "Holler enough, holler enough." Frank grunted and squirmed. He rolled half over, and Almanzo got on top of him. He couldn't stay on top of Frank and hit him, So he bore down with his weight, and he pushed Frank's face deeper and deeper into the snow. And Frank gasped, "Enough!" Almanzo got up on his knees, and he saw Mother in the doorway of the house. She called, "Boys, boys, stop playing now. It's time to come in and warm." They were warm. They were hot and panting. But Mother and the aunts thought the cousins must get warm before they rode home in the cold. They all went tramping in, covered with snow, and Mother held up her hands and exclaimed, "Mercy on us!" The grown-ups were in the parlor, but the boys had to stay in the dining room so they wouldn't melt on the parlor carpet. They couldn't sit down because the chairs were covered with blankets and lap robes, warming by the heater. But they ate apples and drank cider, standing around, and Almanzo and Abner went into the pantry and ate bits off the platters. Then uncles and aunts and the girl cousins put on their wraps, and they brought the sleeping babies from the bedroom, rolled up in shawls. The sleighs came jingling from the barn, and Father and Mother helped tuck in the blankets and lap robes over the hoop skirts. The music of the sleigh bells came back for a little while. Then it was gone. Christmas was over.